Okay, welcome everybody to the March 24th meeting of the Law Committee. Nice to have you all here today. Rebecca Kennedy, I think you were going to call the roll for us?
Yes, Madam Chair. Legislator Plotsky?
Present.
Cunningham?
Here.
Bergdorf?
Here.
Feeney?
Here.
Kuhn?
Here.
Mayo?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
Ricard?
Present.
And Whalen?
Here.
All present, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you, Majority Council. First item of business, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting? Okay,
Yes.
May I have a motion?
Motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
Seconded.
Mr. Peter. Thank you, Mr. Bergdorf. All in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Is Karen Ziegler on yet?
I am. Good evening.
All right, I'm going to jump ahead to Ms. Ziegler's item, which is item 9. As much as she enjoys our meetings, I don't think she'd mind getting out ahead. Karen, would you like to talk about this for a moment?
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me this time. I'm requesting to extend our current Department of Health rape prevention education grant. We are currently, you just started actually our 8th year of this grant, and they've looked to extend it for 2 more years. This is the grant that allows us to do the prevention education and community mobilization. I don't know if you've seen our ads on CDTA buses or on bus shelters. We have something in True Brew. We are on albany.com. Really looking to change the community, looking to prevent violence from happening, interpersonal violence. So they look to extend our current contract for 2 more years. We're in partnership with the Y of Mohawk Valley and Planned Parenthood of Mohawk Valley as well, or actually the Greater New York, now they've changed their name. So I'm hopeful that you will continue to let us do this work.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Ziegler? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
I saw Mr. Ricard's hand first, so thank you, Mr. Ricard, and a second by Ms. Cunningham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Ziegler.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice evening. Take care. All right, let's go on to local law I, which is item number 2, concerning prohibiting smoking in common areas of multiple unit dwellings. Is Mr. Barraro on?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Would you like to say a couple words about it? It looks like we're ready to roll on this.
Sure. As you can see, we've modified this legislation to include what the concerns to address the concerns that members had last time. And I think we should be ready to, move this forward.
Very good. Are there any questions from the committee members at this time? Ms. Cunningham, I see your hand up.
No, I was going to make a motion to move it, but I see that Ms. Whalen has, and maybe Mr. Bergdorf, so I'll
We have a
move my
few
motion.
hands up.
I do have a few questions, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, I actually saw Mr. Ricard first. Let's go with him, then Ms. Whalen, and Mr. Bergdorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Barrar, I just have like one question, and I think I asked the Majority Council this too. I just want to see what the enforcement is. How is this going to be enforced?
We are going towards. Okay, give me 1 second. Can you guys still hear me?
And a follow up to that, Barrar, what is the recourse from the owner of the property for that enforcement procedure? So those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, the first one is we are going towards landlord encouragement, basically encouraging landlords to enforce this as opposed to having police officers or anyone enforce this. And if there is a tenant that is violating this law, then we want the landlord to basically take actions to rectify it, basically issue a warning And if the tenant continues to violate this law, then there would be a fine. The landlord can issue basically an eviction to that tenant and pursue eviction in the court of law. As for landlords, if there is a tenant that is violating this law and someone else is complaining about this, that this is affecting their health to the tenant, and the landlord is not doing anything, that tenant can call upon the Department of Health for them to, carry on investigation and issue a fine to that landlord. And what was the second part of your question? Sorry.
Well, you basically answered them, both of them, but I guess I was under the impression that the tenant or somebody in that building, let's say you had a 4-family, would contact the Department of Health, who would issue the warning or whatever the case they may be. They would follow up on it. That was the impression I was under. Majority Council, can you clarify that, or?
That what you just said is correct.
Sure, Mr. Ricard. Yes, the Commissioner of Health can impose a civil penalty of different levels depending on the level of or the number of the violation. However, I'm sure that we could encourage the landlords to give warnings. They do have to make postings, and they can also provide proof that they have complied with the provisions of this law in order to avoid any liability of their own.
Which is a great point you've just brought up, Rebecca, because that is my concern. I get calls every other day of private messages concerning the landlords, and with the economy, a lot of them back rent on another measure we're going to discuss tonight. But that is the concern that I have. So thank you, and thank you, Barbara.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ricard. Ms. Whalen?
Oh, I'm not sure, but I think there was a typo in section 6, the first paragraph. When you're talking, it's the underlined part. Do you mean Commissioner of Health? It says Commission of Health.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's a clerical error. It's
Okay.
Commissioner of Health.
Okay, so, okay. And then, I've been reading this very carefully since November, and we've made a lot of really good changes. It's come a long way. But when I was reading it again today, it almost appeared to me like parts of it have been lost or dropped off. As I was reading through it, it seems to me like we're only having a no smoking in common area law for inside. It's like it almost dropped. It seems to me like there's a lot of emphasis in the language on indoor, but there's really nothing about outdoor except for like 5 feet from a ventilation intake. And as smart as I am, I don't even really know what that means. I know we've discussed it. I don't even know what, if you're on your patio, or your balcony, 5 feet from ventilation intake means. I know we've talked about what it means. I know we talked about it, but I still don't understand what that means. But on a broader note, it seemed to me like my understanding of this was that we were prohibiting smoking in common areas, both inside and outside, like at the pool, at the tennis court, not on your little deck, like in a townhouse development, like Mr. Bergdorf was concerned about. But it almost looks like there's this emphasis on indoor, but not indoor and outdoor, unless I was reading something or missing something. I'm not sure if that was inadvertently omitted, but you might just want to check again to see.
Yes, it was supposed, I believe it, perhaps members thought it was too broad the way we did it at first. So we had to limit it to 5 feet of ventilation intake. So where ventilation of ventilators are being used, you cannot smoke 5 feet when you're outdoors or indoors to the ventilation intake. So perhaps anywhere else outside you can smoke now, but anywhere indoors you are not allowed to smoke indoors. So we are gearing this more towards indoors common areas.
Oh, that's a big change then. So we did change it. So now you can smoke at your pool if you're like in an apartment complex? Yes? You can
Have
smoke at the
Rebecca answer
garbage
that
can?
one.
What?
That would, Majority Council, would you like to?
Oh, God,
Sure.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yes, under the current iteration of the law, yes, you could.
Unless it's
Oh, so
otherwise
we-
prohibited by that complex. And the
Right.
rules
So
of
it's
that
just
rule, sure.
limited to the 5 feet ventilation intake for outdoors at this time.
Okay, may I ask another question, Madam Chairwoman?
We have
A
3
quick
other
one.
people on this
Oh.
item. Sure, one quick
Okay.
one.
All right, I just noticed though, in the definitions, there's just a lot of attention focused on like swimming pools and tennis courts, so it just seems odd.
I think
Like
that
it doesn't
might have been, if you see the brackets around outdoor common area, that was deleted. That means that language was deleted.
Okay. All right,
So, yeah, try reading it that way. That might make more sense.
okay.
Mr. Bergdorf.
I want to compliment Ferraro and the Majority Council's office for being so responsive to the members' concerns. And I would, notwithstanding what Carol said last night, I would like to be the first Republican co-sponsor of the bill, because I have opposed regional restrictions of sales of cigarettes and things that put us at a competitive disadvantage. I am a fierce advocate of preventing secondhand smoke. So I think this is a tremendous measure, and good job, Baroro. I think this is a good law.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergdorf. Mr. Kuhn.
I really just want to echo a lot of the sentiments that Mr. Bergdorf just expressed. I think that, we've, as a committee, we've been working on this for a few meetings, and I think the product right now is really good, and I think it's a good example of how the committee can work together, and the results can be a really good piece of legislation as we sort of make improvements on the margins here and there. But I think the final product is really good. I think it addressed some of the concerns that were raised in some of our prior meetings, and I think it's absolutely going to achieve the objective for which the legislation was drafted. So like Mr. Bergdorf, I'd be happy to be added as a sponsor as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. Ms. Cunningham.
Yeah, I just, I'm going back to the question about the outdoor areas. We talked about that earlier and decided to limit it to these indoor sort of common areas. I, for one, would actually support going back to broadening it, but I know that was a discussion because I do think there's a lot of folks who live in apartment complexes that, are subjected to somebody else's smoking. And if you're sitting next to someone at a pool and they're smoking a cigarette, you smell that smoke, even if you're outside. I think it's a good bill. I'm glad that we made changes to bring other people on, but I do think that we watered it down a bit because we did eliminate that. And I was going to mention this actually at the onset. I'm glad that others are joining as co-sponsors. I was actually kind of surprised that it was just Mr. Efakora and myself. I think pretty much everybody who wants to protect people from secondhand smoke should jump on this. It protects people in their apartment buildings. And you know what? We spent a lot of time talking about the concerns of landlords, but not as much as I would have liked about the concerns of tenants who are trapped in a lease with, an obnoxious neighbor who smokes wherever they want, and maybe the landlord doesn't really feel like dealing with it. So there's the flip side of that, where you know, the intent of this is to protect tenants from obnoxious behaviors of people who, you know, don't really care if they're you know, impacting you with secondhand smoke. So I'm glad to see others on here, and I will make a motion to move it out when the appropriate time. I don't want to stifle any discussion, though.
Thank you. Majority Council, I thought I was a co-sponsor. If not, could you please add me for future versions? Thank you. Mr. Peter, you're next. And I think the last speaker.
Yes, I was just going to be asked to be a co-sponsor as well, and second Ms. Cunningham's motion, as I know we have a lengthy agenda and a meeting after this.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Cunningham, would you like to make the motion?
Well, can I ask one
Motion.
question real quick?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And this, we can either resolve this really quickly or not, but the within 5 feet of any outdoor ventilation intake, that's a really small amount of space. I mean, 5 feet, like that's, I mean, somebody smoking 5 feet away from an outdoor ventilation intake, I feel like that should be 20 feet, right? I mean, if other people, I mean, 5 feet is inconsequential. I mean, right? If somebody's smoking that I don't think 5 feet is enough. And really, it should be like 20 feet away from an outdoor ventilation intake, or I think any ingress or egress. I hate it when I have to walk through clouds of smoke to get into or out of a building. And I don't want to prolong this, but I also want it to be effective for what it's supposed to do. What are people's thoughts about bumping up 5 feet to 20 feet? And I don't really have any science for that, but 5 feet just doesn't seem adequate to me. And also including within 5 feet or with 20 feet of an ingress or an egress from a building. I don't want to complicate it, but I also want it to be effective for its purpose. So I'll just stop there.
Madam Chair, I can probably answer that question quickly for Jeff.
Sure, Mr. Ricard, if you'd like.
I think with Jeff, I think what the issue is in a residential setting, you know, where there's properties really close. Think of it, there's only 3 feet between each house, literally in a walkway. There might be a vent intake right there. So you're asking somebody to go 20 feet in your example away from that building as opposed to the 5. Now, I understand what you're saying. 5 feet is a little close. 10 feet, yeah, that's maybe realistic, but 5 feet, yeah, is a little close. But I can think of, particular situations where that intake is between two houses, literally. So, to back up your point to some extent, somebody could go in that alleyway between the two houses, and it would theoretically, if the windows were open, affect two houses, because there's only a 3 feet walkway if there's an air intake right there. So maybe 10 feet might be appropriate. You could change that quickly, but that's just my quick thought of that. Hopefully that answers your question.
I just think somebody smoking 5 feet away from my window, that's pretty darn obnoxious.
No, I understand your point.
Well, Madam Chair.
Sure, I was actually going to turn to Mr. Ficoro since.
I'm open to any recommendations, really. So I'm just going to listen to what everyone has to say. And if anyone would make a motion at the end of it, I would be glad to accept it.
Mr. Berger.
I'm 3 feet is very close, but I don't understand, I look at like townhouse situations in the town of Colony where decks are adjacent to each other, sliding glass doors may be somewhat close. So if you get too far beyond that, you might be precluded from smoking on your own property. I understand the common walkway concept, but I would suggest we leave it as it is and see how it works. And if there are problems, come back and adjust the footage.
I don't want my suggestion to hold this up. I mean, if there was sort of general consensus, then that's one thing, but if it's gonna hold it up, then forget it. We'll just keep it at 5 feet.
I don't think we can, a majority council, correct me, I don't think we can change that footage without going through public hearing again, because that I think would be a substantive change.
There's a question as to whether it would be a substantial change, so it's possible it could hold it up. I would have to look into it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that I'm open to discussion. I don't want to take this too much longer, but I think the legislation developed from it was quite a long distance. Then we got it down to 5 feet. So, you know, we might never. I agree that 5 sounds small, but the houses are quite close together in a lot of the neighborhoods. So,
But there is an argument that 5 feet is meaningless.
Madam Chair, you
what do
have,
folks want to do here?
you have a motion, a second on the floor. Why don't you see what the vote is?
Yeah.
I don't know
second-
that Joanne actually made the motion yet.
Did I make it? I
Yes.
can't.
No,
I
not yet.
tried
You
to
said
make
you-
it. Well, let
You
me,
said you would make it
before-
at the appropriate time.
Before I do that, I guess I would ask Mr. Epicoro, do you, are you interested? Because if it is a substantive change that requires a public hearing, you know, it's your bill. And, you know, we don't want to do something that is unfriendly to the prime sponsor here.
Oh, I'm
But-
open to anything, really. I'm open to, if somebody makes a motion to amend it to 10 feet, 20 feet, and it passes, then I would go with it. But if it doesn't pass, then we just have to move forward.
I
Or
can
we
make a
can
motion
move
for
forward with
10
the bill.
feet. I can make a motion for up to 10 feet.
Yeah, I'm not the parliamentarian, but it's going from 5 to 10, I don't think we need to go back to public hearing for that.
I would accept 10 feet unless it is impractical and it precludes someone from smoking on their own property, on their own deck.
I'm not sure we know that, right?
Well,
I mean, do we know that 5 feet precludes somebody whose houses or apartments or whatever are so close from smoking on their own deck?
well, that's why I said, why don't we leave it the way it is? And if it comes to be a problem, it becomes a simple amendment.
Madam Chairman, to Mr. Berger's point, if you move it out tonight, we could decide before the legislative meeting in April whether or not that's a substantive change, and it can be amended on the floor. So I don't want to weigh in one side or the other, but you can move it out tonight, and if you're at all capable of making that change, you'll still be able to make it in April.
Mhm.
All right. That sounds
Do you
good.
think the ventilation intake includes egress in your understanding of the legislation, or is that meant to be open windows? Like, is this already covering entrances to buildings?
Rebecca?
I would have, my expectation was that it would cover windows and actual ventilation, like vents, that type of thing.
Okay.
So,
But doors, I mean, I don't think it's that clear.
so I just
Yeah, I
want to
don't think it's-
clarify that then, Rebecca. You
To
have
me,
two houses next to each other, right? Somebody's walking down those alleyway between the two houses. There's an intake, let's say on the house on the left. So somebody's smoking there. They can't be smoking there or can be smoking there.
That will depend on the distance, I believe. Yeah.
The person's gonna walk right through the other person because it's only 3 feet between the two houses. That's my question.
Then it will be, even with the law, with the legislation as it is right now, that would be no smoking, because then it will be within 5 feet. of a
So-
ventilation intake.
Okay, all right.
Well, once again, my concern is for these duplex townhouse developments where people have contiguous decks where they might have two sliding glass doors that may be, possible under certain circumstances to be open closer
Understood.
than 10 feet. And then in that actuality, you preclude somebody from the use of their own property. So I don't know if there's a way that you can accommodate that, but I don't want to be the one that turns an entire duplex into the outdoor area into a no smoking zone.
I think the statute as written does not impact that situation, assuming those patios and decks are, more than 5 feet, because, width of a sliding glass door and all that, so they can be chock-a-block and still you would be in compliance with this. So I think addressing your concern, Mr. Bergdorf, if we let it move forward as it is now, and then maybe further discussion about whether we want to extend that footage at the next meeting to make an amendment at that time. So I think that's where we can move forward with this unless anyone objects, but let's see if there's a motion.
Well,
Ms.
we already have a
Cunningham.
motion from Mr. Ricard on the 10 feet.
I can
Okay.
withdraw the motion though, right?
You
Yeah.
could, or I could second it.
Whatever, whatever you guys want to do,
Okay, it sounds like we have a motion to amend the 5 feet to 10 feet and a second by Ms. Cunningham. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right.
Can we make it 10 feet if practicable?
I don't think that would be practicable. You can 10 feet unless you're on your own property.
Madam
But
Chair,
no, because that wouldn't work either. Yes. Ms.
Well,
McGarry.
let me, if I may, Mr. Bergdorf, I mean, the scenario that you're talking about, right, where there's sort of a common deck, that really wouldn't be within, even if we move this out to 10 feet, I don't even think that would be within the scope of the prohibition, right? Because the common deck, it doesn't say right now ingress and egress, right? It says an outdoor ventilation intake, right? Which is a window. So if people are sort of sharing a common deck and there's a sliding door, I don't even think that would be considered, the outdoor ventilation intake. So I think we'd be.
So our opinion is the sliding glass door that goes into your neighbor's house would not be would not be treated the same as ventilation or window.
Well, I thought we had said that it wasn't, outdoor ventilation intakes weren't ingress and egress, right? That was different. So,
Rebecca, you think we're all right?
we can make any changes between now and the legislative meeting if the committee is amenable to that. If Mr. Ricard wants to withdraw his motion to amend to the 10 feet, we can have a motion to move it out, and then we can determine whether the 10-foot change would be a substantial change, triggering a public hearing.
If I can withdraw the motion then.
Okay.
Okay.
It sounds like.
I will make a motion to do what Rebecca just said.
Thank you. Mr.
Second.
Ricard has withdrawn the motion.
Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham, did you have a motion on the floor to move this as written?
Sure. I motion to move it out, the favorable recommendation.
All right.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bergdorf. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstains? Abstentions, rather? Great, thank you. This passes unanimously with a positive recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Epicoro.
Thank you.
Lots of work on this one. And thank you for the patience of everyone listening, waiting for future items on the agenda. All righty. All right. I was going to take this later, but I think we do have people waiting on this item. I will go to item 3, which is local law A, local law related to procedures for the establishment, operation, modification, and disestablishment of tourism improvement districts in Albany County. Mr. Epicoro, would you like to speak on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe this is establishing a tourism improvement district in the county of Albany would not only, put us in the right path to attract more businesses, but it would lead to economic development in Albany and creation of jobs for the hotel industries, but not just the hotel industry, but also like our grocery stores, our shopping malls, Crossgate Mall, Colony Malls. People would come here and shop, they would go out and eat in restaurants, and this is going to trickle down to so much benefits for our county. And we have to, like we heard from some of the speakers last time in the presentations, sometimes you have to pay to play, and this is common sense and economics. This is how economics work. You have to put money in order to get money out. So I think this is something that is going to help our local economy here compete better for activities, for more activities in Albany. And I believe we should all, see this as something that will help us to get out of this economic downturn. And if you would allow me, Madam Chairman, I would like to yield some of my time to Jill from Discover Albany.
To?
Jill from Discover Albany.
Jill.
If she's still on.
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
Jill
here.
Delaney, I see you there. Sure, Ms. Delaney, just a moment. If you want to make a brief comment, that'd be great. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. As many of actually all of the speakers who have spoken for this bill, as well as the two who spoke against it at the public hearing, all agreed that our organization does a great job with the minimum funds that we have. However, we are underfunded. The question was only how to go about supplying the sufficient funds to do that. And this is the only solution that we to date have come up with, and it is a proven solution. And so we would absolutely be thrilled to move this forward. We do have our subject matter expert on as well, Tiffany Gallagher. So if there are any questions about the legal piece of that, that is why we have her. I'm an expert in tourism, not in law. But this has been proven in nearly 200 other destinations across the country to not cause any sort of deficiency in bookings, but actually increase those bookings.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Delaney. Ms. Whalen, you have a question.
Yes. So, it's interesting that Mr. Epicoro used that expression pay to play. I really can't stand that expression. I know someone at the public hearing had testified that, in order to be successful economically, you have to pay to play. And that really bothered me because it sounds almost like corruption. I don't really understand what that means. You have to pay to play, but and someone maybe can enlighten me on that, and maybe Mrs. Gallagher but what I don't also understand is if you have to pay to play, and Mr. Epicoro just said, you have to pay to play and everyone will benefit. why then are we just picking on the hotels? It seems inequitable. Like this is something, it looks to me like when I read through the legislation, that these districts are set up in very specific areas where everybody agrees, including all business owners. And so is this an assessment that would also trickle down to pizza shops, liquor stores, any other small business in the region? And why is it that they have to pay to play? What are they paying for or playing for? I guess these are some
Mr.
questions
Ficoro, would you
that
like
I
to
have.
Yes, I will be glad to
explain?
answer that. In pay to play has a bad connotation to it, perhaps because when you hear the word pay to play, usually you hear of bribery and officials bribing other people. But pay to play, in a sense, also means in order to win the lottery, you have to play the lottery. And in order to play the lottery, you need to pay to play the lottery, and then you win. So for economic development, you have to invest. In order for you to get money from the bank or something like that, even though the bank always charge money, you have to, like, you want to get a CD, a certificate of deposit, you put your money in the bank in a certificate of deposit, you leave it there, and you get more money back. So you basically spend money or lock your money out to get more money back. If you play in the lottery, you have to play more to increase your chances of winning it. So that is what I mean by pay to play in that aspect. Now, we are not looking to have the pizza stores or any other businesses have to pay this assessment. This is only being applied to the hoteliers that are 20 hotel rooms, or the hotel industry and hotels that are 25 rooms and more. Now, I understand some people have some questions in regards to the business language that is there. So we are going to look to strengthen that language. But I want to see what everybody has to say here first before I make that move.
I'm happy to add to that the clarification in respect to the legal question about businesses. Reference the legislation referencing businesses. The definition of business just means the type or category of business that is described in the Tourism Improvement District Plan. So this enabling legislation outlines the rules for formation of a district. And so while we're speaking to the hope and intention of the lodging industry, this particular law sets up the rules for formation of a district. One of those rules is there has to be a Tourism Improvement District Plan that is put together by the stakeholders and ultimately voted on by the stakeholders to pass. If the pizza industry wants to form a district or join in a district, they would have to be a part of the plan and vote on the plan. This is not a levy or assessment that can be imposed upon any business without their contribution and particular vote. So there's procedures for that. And so does it allow for other businesses to come in where they might benefit from the plan? Yes. However, the particular intention here is for lodging businesses to convene a plan and then pass that amongst themselves. I'd also like to add to the pay to play analogy. In this particular case, I think the reference is talking more to the deficit in funds where the hotels do not have the ability to contribute to real pay to play opportunities, which means a bid. So if you have a group that is coming in and group incentive is required or a bid fee is required, there is not enough resources for the hotels to be able to collectively go after that piece of business. And in order to be able to even bid, you have to kind of put up that money. And so in this particular case, this fund would help offset that.
So Ms. Gallagher, could you just, for the benefit of everybody on the meeting and for the record, if you wouldn't mind just stating your name, who you're here from. This is not a public hearing, so we can only really turn to you with specific questions. It's very unusual to have anyone outside of the committee comment on these, but we do appreciate your expertise. My understanding is that these funds will help hotels bid on events to try to attract them to the Albany area. Is that correct?
The plan is, so my name is Tiffany.
And if you could
Gephardt.
please, introduce yourself.
Of course. I represent Civitas. We're a legal and consulting firm. We drafted the enabling law that you're looking at. We did that in concert with the stakeholders, the industry, Discover Albany, and Albany County Law. So thank you for the opportunity to speak here. So what the industry is seeking to do here is to pass a statute or an enabling law that would allow them to be able to formulate their plan. So there's a lot of ideas right now around what the needs are of the industry, but they don't have the permission to actually convene and put this plan together.
Okay, all right.
So they're hoping.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
This is Luke Rogers from the County Exec's Office. If I could just quickly speak to one of Ms. Whalen's questions about
Sure, Mr.
applying
Rogers.
beyond the hotel industry. You don't have to take our word for it. Section 6B, the county legislature may initiate proceedings to form a tourism improvement district. And if you go to section 6C, 6C3, 2, it looks like the types and categories of businesses that will be subject to the assessment will be identified in the plan. So I just want to be clear that nobody is intending for this to apply to businesses outside of that industry who brought this to us and expressed interest. But even if that were a concern, I would like to think that language, mitigates that. And that ultimately the legislature will have to approve the formation of a tourism improvement district and have the opportunity to weigh in on that concern.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. I'd like to go to Mr. Kuhn next. Other button.
Jeff, you're still muted.
You're still muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
I was just wondering if, in reading the legislation, there's portions of it that kind of talk about activities and improvements. And I was just wondering, in a really practical, if we could get sort of a, kind of just a summary in a few minutes of how exactly this would work. Like, because activities improvements is a pretty big term, and I understand it's probably designed that way so that, there's some flexibility in what the activities improvements are going to be. But so yeah, if I could just hear sort of how this would actually practically work. And then the other question I had is, and not having a lot of really any familiarity with the hotel industry, there are events. The thing that I've heard several times, I heard it earlier at the public hearing and again tonight, is that there are events that might potentially come to Albany County, and there is a need for sort of a consortium of hotels to bid on that event. And in order to do that, they need like an amount of money. So like there's some event that would be going on and people would say, well, if you're interested in having this event, you have to pay us whatever, $5,000. I really don't understand how that works. And if someone could explain it, that would be helpful.
Ms. Delaney is nodding her head. Again, it's unusual to have non-committee members speak, but please, 10 words or less, go for it.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. It is complicated, so it makes sense that you'd want somebody who's from the industry explain these things. And Tiffany knows this, and if I leave anything out, please jump in. Jay Cloutier, who's also our director of sales, deals with this. He's on the call as well. He deals with this all the time. We have to often bid on a piece of business that requires a contribution from the destination. NCAA is a fantastic example of that. We've all lived through this. We end up spending an inordinate amount of time not only putting those bids together, getting all of the various hotels, the Times Union Center, the Capitol Center, to put together a whole package, because it takes more than multiple hotels to pull together NCAA men's Division I basketball bid that we bid on several years out. But in order to attract them to Albany over, say, Atlantic City, New Jersey, we also need to incentivize them. We need to give them rebates on their rooms. We need to give them parking incentives, places to put the motor coach buses. There's a whole bunch that we need to include in these bids to draw that business here over another city. But the economic impact of this is huge for the city. So we spend a lot of time trying to get all the moving parts of such a piece of business to work together because we don't have a fund to underwrite that. So that's one example of why we need this kind of money. And it's not always a bid fee, though there are things with bid fees. There are major events that would drive, $1 million in economic impact here, and it would cost us $25,000 to bid on that. Buffalo gets those pieces of business. Albany can't afford to even try. So we look, and the hotels would look as a group, as a governing body over these funds, at the return on the investment of every single expenditure out of this fund to make sure that it was driving room nights, stays in their buildings on any event we tried to bring to Albany.
Okay.
Does that clarify your question?
Mr. Kuhn, does that help?
It does. And so that sounds like an activity, right? And I think it's a great example. We all understand it. And, getting the NCAA here is fantastic, right? But what about improvements? That makes it sound like there's some sort of permanent fixture or building that's going to be
right. And that I think Ms. Gallagher can clarify, and I could, but I think technically, legally, she's better equipped for this if she is able to have a moment.
Okay, Ms. Gallagher, really briefly, please. Thank you.
Local improvement is defined, page 2. And so how local improvement is defined is the authorized activity, sir.
Oh, okay.
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 That
Ms.
is helpful.
Cunningham.
Thank you for that explanation. That was exactly what I was looking for.
Madam Chair.
I'll get to you, Mr. Ricard. I have a couple people before you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Cunningham?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think this is such a win-win for Albany County. And I thought that example was terrific, but when I started thinking about this, the sky's the limit. So, if there's some music festival that is looking for a northeastern venue and and Albany wants to bid on it. I mean, this is, that would be a new thing that Albany could draw to our community. And maybe, I don't know what the improvement, whether this would qualify, but something like that, maybe you have to put some money into, the Park Playhouse venue in order to make it suitable for, this music festival to come. But to me, it's a total no-brainer win-win, because it just means that Albany is now going to have a funding stream that will allow them to put together, using a lot of muscle and resources, a whole sort of presentation to attract lots of things that are out there looking for venues. And just keep in mind that, I think I'm not alone in this, that post-COVID, we're going to see an explosion of potential entertainment venues that are, people want to convene. I think this is so perfectly timed right now, because this will position us to look forward at a time when people are going to be looking for things to do and places to go and interesting cities to visit. So those music venues or those Adirondack festival types of things, whatever they may be, Albany has a ton to offer, and this positions us in such a robust way. And I think it's a win-win, it's a no-brainer, and I'd love to be a co-sponsor. And thanks for doing this, Mr. Ekaforah.
Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham.
And get ready to say that again on the floor on the day of the vote.
I am happy to.
Thank you. Majority Council, if you could please add me as well as a co-sponsor. Mr. Bergdorf, you're next.
Thank you. I'm probably going to give you a different perspective, as you might understand. When Baroro first called me with this, and I read through the legislation, and I've read through it about 10 different times. The first thing he told me was, and the county executive's office told me the same thing, was that the hotel industry was unanimous in their support for a TID. It wasn't you, Luke, it was one of your colleagues. So I'll tell you who it was if you're concerned. But the first 4 calls that I made, and maybe it's because of where I live in Latham, I reached out to some of the larger and smaller venues in the town of Colonnade. And I called the Century House and they were opposed. And I called the Desmond and they were opposed. And I called the Trilogy and they were opposed. And I called the Holiday Inn Express in Latham and they were opposed. So they're all sort of larger types of hotels. And so then I kind of thought about Wolf Road. And so I called a small owner that had 2 hotels on Wolf Road. And he told me that he had historically been against the tax, but that Ms. Delaney and Mike Hoffman had done a wonderful job of coming up to meet with him during the summer. And he agreed to sign on in support. And I said, do you still feel that way as we're now out 7-8 months? And he said to me, I don't think the timing is right now. I don't think we ought to be adding a 2% room tax right now. In addition, today I spoke with the general manager of the Albany Hilton Hotel. And because it had been reported to me that the Albany Hilton Hotel was opposed to the room tax. And I said, wow, now we got a bunch of big ones, including one in downtown Albany. And he told me that he discussed it with his executive ownership. And while they were supportive of the concept, they are very concerned about the timing of the implementation. Now is not the time to add a 2% room tax onto a bill. So also—
If I may, just a point of correction, I don't believe anyone, I don't believe this is called a tax. I know you've said it 3 times. I just wanted to clarify that.
You can call it whatever you want, but it's fondly known as bed tax. And and why are we doing this? Because somehow the bed tax got away from us. We have an 8% sales tax, and then we have 2% that goes to amortize the Times Union Arena. And then we have 3% that goes to the Capitol Center. But that 3% was agreed to when the Capitol Center was going to be a $375 to $400 million facility. And they never built that. They built a 70 some odd $1 million facility. So the big winner here in terms of revenue is the Capitol Center, because they got funding put in place for something that they did not actually produce. And Jill, I just want you to know that even the people that are not supportive of raising the bed tax are absolutely supportive of your organization. They think you do a tremendous job, and none of this is personal. It's economic and it's business. They would like to see a reallocation of the 6% that is out there, which actually, with one party in control of the Senate, the Assembly, and the governorship, if such a decision were to be made, it would be very easy to reallocate some of that money and provide more money to Discover Albany. There's no rhyme or reason why we have to wait 2 years for a local funding bill to expire, but that's I'm off on a tangent. The reason that a number of people are concerned, and I realize when you talk about competition, Discover Albany, you're talking about Rochester and Buffalo and Philadelphia and, you know, big regional competition. You talk to some of these people that are up in the northern end of the county, and they're competing with Clifton Park, which has 8% total, 7% sales tax, and 1% bed tax, and we're at 14. Okay. Saratoga Springs, 7% sales tax, 6% bed tax, so they're at 13. They're lower than us already. Schenectady is at 13. They're lower than us already. And Rensselaer's at 11. So what one hotelier said to me was, when I compete for an out-of-town meeting and someone's deciding whether it's Southern Saratoga County or Latham or Loudonville, there's a 6% difference that they tell me I have to make up out of my room rate in order to even compete. So they're very concerned about that now going to 8%, and they feel as though the timing is not right. A little before this meeting, a chart went out about who supported it and who opposed it and who hadn't made a decision. I think you have some inaccuracies there, because last night I counted at least 6 people that were against it. And I will tell you that some of the smaller hotels in the Hilton say the timing isn't right.
Okay. I think we're hearing
I'm going to make one
Mr.
more
Bergdorf.
point, and then I'll stop. You know, I kind of look at this bed tax. It's kind of like the taxes on your cell phone. You know, you have a $100 cell phone bill, but when you get the bill, it's $124 because they've tacked 13 separate taxes onto a cell phone bill because everybody needs to get sort of a little piece. And I'm not sure that $3 million more is a good thing. And I think it's a ripe target. And I, for the good of Discover Albany, I do not. I understand your advocacy, and I applaud your efforts. But I also look at the fact that, you know, the city of Albany is getting almost a $90 million windfall. The county is picking up $60 million. We have other.
Bergdorf, I think we got to wrap it up.
We have
very briefly.
Other funding sources like the IDA, Local Development Corporation, the City of Albany. If we want to find other sources of revenue, we can do it without saying, gee, the federal government's increasing taxes. Gee, the state government is increasing taxes. Hey, here in Albany County, we can increase a tax or an assessment. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to vote no on this, even on the formative stages of it, because
Okay,
I would.
thanks, Paul. I think we got to
Okay.
move forward. Your position, I think you've made it clear. So appreciate the
Thank you.
communication. I'd like to move forward and perhaps cease discussion on this unless anyone has some burning issue we have not covered yet
Yeah,
that
Madam
they
Chair.
are dying to ask.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Ricard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I had a list of 6 questions, and I don't want to get into them now. But in listening to and Jill, by the way, I appreciate all your efforts. Everybody I talk to says you do a great job. I know you do a great job, and it's appreciative. The bottom line is listen to some of the hoteliers last night, listen to some of my colleagues tonight. I think we all have a lot of questions. I personally can't in good conscience vote on this measure at the present time until I get those questions answered. Is there any way we could delay this a month, and that would be up to Bararo to get those questions answered? Maybe we could all have send them to legislative staff, then month all our questions will be answered. Maybe that would be a better way to approach this. That's
Mr.
about all I had to
Rogers,
say on it.
you had raised your hand.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is obviously the committee's prerogative, but I would just like to point out that Discover Albany has gone above and beyond to promptly respond to all questions that have come their way, in addition to scheduling a special meeting outside of the conventional committee meeting schedule to be available to answer Q&A and present on the details of this. So I just want that to be out there for the record.
Thank you. I understand that, Mr. Rogers. I attended part of that informational session, and it was very helpful explaining the whole system and how why these funds would be helpful.
But Mr. I'm going to clarify something. You got to understand, when we're in the deliberative process here, certain questions come up that you might not have thought of at the beginning of the meeting. So I didn't have a lot of these questions till now. So that's why I'm saying, why can't we delay it a month? I want to do everything we can to help out Joe, but why rush? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Ficoro, are you willing to table? Would you rather go forward this evening? And
I mean, I think if there's any question to ask, I think the public is watching. I want to hear those questions tonight on this meeting. And if we have to stay here until 12 p.m., then let's stay and answer those questions, unless we don't have answers to those questions.
I'm okay with that.
And I'm happy to offer a motion if there aren't any questions. I think I'm happy to offer a motion to report it out.
And I would second that.
Madam Chair.
We were back with Mr. Ricard with his 6 questions. So, Mr. Grimm, really quickly, what do you have?
Well, I haven't had a chance to comment here, and I've listened carefully. I've studied this quite extensively the last 2 or 3 months. There were 3 hotelers who spoke in favor of this, the so-called unanimous support. There were only 3 hotelers who spoke in favor of this at the public hearing. 2 of them were on the board of Discover Albany. And then opposite of that, you had 3 hotelers who spoke against it, one from the Desmond, one Justin Smith, who's involved with 26 hotels, and then Ken Raymond, who founded the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Albany. And when he did, they said, we'll go with a hotel tax in order to fund this. So the hotel tax was 3 cents. Then it was 4 cents. And then it was 6 cents. And still, they're coming back for more money because of the way the hotel tax is divvied up. That's the problem here. Is it the Albany County Legislature position that we don't tax people enough? Because this is a $3 million tax hike. It's a tax. And when you impose something on someone who doesn't want to pay it, it's a tax. So that we really have to stress. This is a $3 million tax hike.
Madam Chairman, I would like to respond to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think people keep using the word tax and tax and tax because that is what they want people to hear, and they're playing to psychology of people. This is not a tax, it's an assessment. And it's an assessment because people that are responsible for these hoteliers will actually get to vote on it. When you tax people, when the legislature imposes tax on people, they don't get the general public or the hotel or the businesses to vote to see if they want to adopt it. this is in a different direction. It's an assessment, and that means those businesses will actually get to vote on it. And what we are doing tonight is what we are trying to do right now is an enabling legislation, which means we are telling Discover Albany to go ahead and put a plan together. And it is up to the legislature to see whether or not we want to adopt that plan. This is just giving them the go ahead to actually go to plan, to put a plan together. And this is not a tax, because a tax is different from assessment. Maybe some people or anyone, I don't know, I don't want to offend anyone tonight, but it's good to use the right vocabulary and the right language when treating legislations, because this is an assessment.
That's your opinion, Carl. It's
okay, Mr. Grimm.
No, wait a minute. No, this is a very important issue. The idea, because you say it's assessment, then it must be an assessment. That's not true. The hotel tax is already 6 cents. That's called a hotel tax, and they're adding 2. The people with 24 rooms or less are not going to pay anything, even though they're getting the benefit of the tourism investment. This is a tax on a narrow group of folks, some of them who don't want it, by the way. And let's at least be honest. If we're going to raise taxes, we should stand up and say, I'm for raising taxes.
Well, maybe there's a dictionary that actually experienced something between a tax and an assessment. Maybe we should use a dictionary and see what the definitions of taxes and assessments are.
Thank you, Mr. Ficaro. Mr. Ricard, you had 6 questions. Let's rip through them quickly, see if we can get those resolved.
Thank you.
Number 1.
Madam Chair, you're aware that another meeting started at 7, correct? For economic development?
I'm aware that I have an agenda to finish, and I'm trying to get it finished.
Okay. So the first question, Jill, you're a not-for-profit corporation. That's correct. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'd like to see, and we could share at the committee, I'd like to see copies of all your 999 forms for censure formation.
Why is that pertinent here? Why is that a question about this pending legislation? What's your next question?
Do you want me to answer your question first, Madam Chair, or do you
Sure.
want me to go to my next question?
I don't see how that's relevant.
So do you want me to answer your question?
Sure.
Okay, the reason it's relevant because Discover Albany is asking for more money. So I would like to see what they spend on their 990 forms since their formation. That's why the question is relevant.
You can actually
You don't
find
need-
that online yourself. They're all online.
And Ms. Delaney, you don't have to respond to that. That can be done offline outside of this committee. If that's
So
something
you want us
need
to
decide.
vote on something that's not, well, I'm not going to get into that. So the next question, so what was the budget for Discover Albany since its formation every year?
I've only worked for Discover Albany for 3 years, so I don't have that answer in front of me, but the legislature, every member of the legislature has been supplied with an annual report every year. And so you do see where we've spent our money and what the budget is.
Okay, third question.
Okay, so am I going to get any of my questions answered this evening, or?
It sounds like the annual report is available. I don't know how that is pertinent to the legislation in front of us right now.
Because
Could
you're
you please go
asking
your
us
third question?
to spend more money. And by the way, to go back to Bararo's point, if money's coming out of someone's pocket, it is a tax.
I'm not going to discuss tax versus assessment anymore.
Okay.
That issue
that's
is
fine,
closed. You guys
but
can
if it's-
grandstand through your emails all you want. We need to move this meeting along. What is your next
It's not
question?
grandstanding, it's a statement of fact, Madam Chair.
Hooray.
Are you
So-
going to ask your next question?
I am going to ask my next question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, is there any other ways, Jill, that you could increase the revenue streams without having a TID?
There is no way that we have discovered.
Okay. So if somehow funds got allocated from another budget line item, that wouldn't work?
I don't have an answer to that. We have a budget that is provided to us by a very minimal amount of revenue streams. That budget gets approved by the county legislature every year. And we have researched other options that other organizations such as ours have done, and this is the most viable option.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
Mr.
gonna ask
Ricard, next
one
question.
one more question. Now, this goes to Tiffany. Tiffany, what is the total length this whole process you think is going to take? In terms of beginning to end here. Because I know you mentioned something about sometimes these take up to 4 years.
No. I was referencing passing state enabling legislation
Okay,
when we talked about that. So once this law is passed, it enables the industry to begin the formation process. So there has to be a plan put together. There has to be consensus built in the community. We have to petition the stakeholders. The hoteliers have to vote on the plan. Then that would go to public hearing when there's a noticing process. Of course, you're familiar with that. And then we would have to move through the approval process of the county legislature. If it depends on how long it takes to pass this law, and then thereafter those pieces. It may take a while to put together a plan where we can get all of our hotels behind it. We have to have the opportunity to do that. Then we have to get the actual signatures. So that would take some time.
Okay.
My experience is 30 to 60 days. I think it could take, I would say at most, it would take a year from the time that this law is passed to form the district.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher.
thank you, Madam
Ms.
Chair. No further
Cunningham.
questions.
Thank you. Ms. Cunningham?
I was just going to ask to move the motion. I mean, I think we've talked enough. People have
Thank you.
questions. Some of them are
Second, Madam
relevant,
Chair.
some of
This is
them
second
not.
by
but-
Mr. Peter. All in favor of moving this with a favorable recommendation this evening, please say aye.
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 No,
No,
No.
No.
I'm getting to, okay, stop. I asked for the ayes. Who is aye? State your name. Let's get it on the record. Vicky Plotsky. Joanne, are you an aye?
Jo- I'm an aye.
Great. Mr. Peter,
I'm an aye, Madam Chair.
thank you. Who else?
This is Jeff Kuhn. I'm an aye.
Thank you. Mr. Kuhn. Who else?
Dennis Feeney, aye.
Thank you. Okay, and the nays, please speak up.
Whalen is a no.
Okay, thank you.
Bergdorf is a no.
Okay, thank you.
Bernard is no.
And thank you.
Hey, Mayo's a no.
Thank you. Great. The measure passes 5-4 with a favorable recommendation, if I'm correct in my math, Majority Council. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 3, local law B, providing reduction of the redemption period to 1 year for residential property located within a local municipality, which has been determined by it pursuant to New York State Real Property Tax Law, Section 1111A, to be vacant and abandoned. Mr. Peter, I believe this is yours.
Yes, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Certainly.
This is the bill, we've had the public hearing now, to basically allow the county with an update from the local municipality to move the foreclosure process from 4 to 2 years. I'm sorry, did someone say something?
I don't believe so.
And that's being done when that property is labeled vacant and abandoned, certified by the locality. This is an important step and was a first recommendation from the Blight to Betterment report, which we should be having in the next couple of weeks. However, this was very pertinent to come out and try to get it done rather quickly, as this one there's no cost to the county. It was done thanks to a bill put in by Assemblyman John McDonald, which subsequently passed and signed. A local municipality, for example, Albany, would certify that buildings that are being under foreclosure are vacant and abandoned. It would increase that process from, again, 4 to 2 years, and it would decrease, hopefully, the chance of emergency demo and increase the chance of a rehabilitation once it would get to the land bank or the county based on a disposition policy.
Okay, great. Are there any questions for Mr. Peter about this bill? Ms. Cunningham?
Motion to move it.
Is there a second?
Second,
I will
Whalen.
second. Thank you, Ms. Whalen, as a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Peter. Item 5, local law C, establishing a school bus camera program. Who's our sponsor on this one?
Mr. Miller.
Oh, Mr. Miller, would you mind? Of course.
I'll be very
How
brief.
could I forget? No problem. Thank you.
Another demonstration project. I'll just sum it up because it's been long here. to allow the county to enter into contracts with both the school districts and the third-party administrator in order to get those cameras on school buses to prevent stopping when they're at red lights. It ends up being no cost to the school district and essentially no cost to the county. And the money would go from the fines, goes to the company to get the cameras, to install the cameras, to maintain the cameras, to review the videos, and send them to the county just for the actual ticket writing.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Miller?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Peter?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to be added to this as a sponsor, and I also like to move this with a positive recommendation if there are no other questions, Madam Chair.
Like to be added also.
Yeah, I'd like to be added if I'm not already.
Yep,
I would like to be added as well.
be added to.
Add me. Add me, please.
Bergdorf.
Okay, and there's a motion, and who is seconding?
I can second it.
Can
Thank
I,
you, Mr. Ricard.
sorry, can I be added also? Thank
And
you.
you got me to
Everybody's
add,
in.
did you get me to add to that, Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, should I
Majority
add?
of council.
Everybody.
It sounds like we're adding all present. Thank you. Is there anyone who does not want to be added? Yeah, great. Okay. And we have a seconded motion on the floor to pass this with a favorable recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? No, great. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Local law D needs to be tabled pending public hearing, which is a little lower down on the agenda. Item 7 is local law E regarding installment payments of taxes during the COVID-19 state of emergency. This again, Mr. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Thank you.
Per our last conversation on this, when it was at for public hearing, many individuals requested that myself or through actually majority council reach out to municipalities and see who else was interested. Rebecca did great work on that, reaching out. What it came to was other municipalities did not want to risk cash flow for this, as they didn't see as much of a pressing issue as the city of Albany did. The city of Albany does wish to continue it. However, any municipality that does want to join in any future time would be eligible to do so, as long as they do exactly what the state and the law says they must do. But again, the big issue for the city of Albany was that small landlords, especially ones with, 2-family, maybe 3-family owner occupied, they saw a spike in issues with paying their property taxes. This allows for a little bit of an extension so that they're not hit with fees and interest rates, and gives them more of a time to do that. The city of Albany did see a spike, and they're requesting, they requested the ability to do this so that we do not get into a debt cycle with these certain individuals.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bergdorf?
Matt,
Yes.
you had said that the city of Albany still needs this for their cash flow purposes?
No, I apologize. The question to other municipalities do they want to do this? And they didn't see the need, nor did they want to risk their cash flow. The city of Albany felt that their cash flow is okay, and they would like to see this done. I apologize for any confusion.
Okay, well, the only point I would like to make is the difference as we sit here a month later is that the city of Albany is going to get $89 million, which is substantially more than Albany County is going to get. We're going to get $60 million. And they've got their $12 million that they normally used to have to go out and fight for, is in both of the legislative budgets. So the city of Albany is in a cash position of 89 and 12. I guess that's over $100 million more than they were a month ago, but yet we're still asking Albany County to
Let's be very specific on a couple things. So you can't spend COVID relief money on taxes, on interest rates that specifically are being sent to and done by Albany County as the foreclosing entity. We know that, right? That the county also gets the benefit, right, of generally speaking, of when they get the interest rates and payments and stuff like that. So it's the correct entity. Second, the 12.5 is a gap measure based on the fact that we know the city of Albany has more tax exempt property. It's to make it whole. So it's not a cash bonanza. It's to cover services. For example, sir, I believe you worked at Dasney.
Yep.
And that, for example, that building doesn't pay taxes. You don't pay taxes to the city of Albany, but
Actually it did. We negotiated pilots with the
pilots,
city.
right? But the same thing is that other non-for-profits, especially state buildings, stuff like that, hospitals, roads, they use it. They don't come in. The 12.5 pays for some of those services and the gap that's been traditionally done. In addition, the 85 million has to, one, spend for several years because specifically it's for lost revenue of several years. The other thing is we're going to see reassessments, offices and buildings that weren't done. We're going to see reassessments being requested to lower rates, and the city has to deal with that. But overall, the whole point of this is that this is specifically a county related issue when it comes to waiving of interest rates for a specific amount of time to allow for more payment. And we understand that it's specifically happening. It was open to all municipalities. Some see that there wasn't a problem. Some saw that there were, but they didn't want to risk their cash flow. This is something that specifically needs both the locality and the county to be on the same page. So it's not as easy as the city now has money, therefore it doesn't need anything. We could say that with anything.
Well, my only point was the city did substantially better than the county in the stimulus package, and yet it appears that we now will be. I am going to support this, but we are in essence underwriting a portion of this lost funds. That's all.
No, and I understand.
Is there a motion?
Oh, I apologize. Sorry.
Motion to move it
Thank
out
you, Ms.
favorably.
Cunningham. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Peter. Item 8, public hearing on local law D in relation to third-party delivery services, the restaurant protection law. This is for a public hearing.
Motion.
Motion.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Feeney, second by Mr. Peter. All in favor?
Aye.
It's going to public hearing. Aye. Thank you, everybody. Any opposed? No. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney, second by Mr. Peter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for your patience, everybody. I apologize for keeping you all late, and I hope the discussion was worth it.